welcome to the Doctors Who podcast. My name is Chris.
I'm Chip.
And I'm Brian.
And we are on part 3 of our discussion on Mistborn, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson.
Part 3, wow. All right.
Yeah. Today we're going to be talking about chapters 5 and 6. Before we get going, I don't know if it's important to note, but I would like to note that there's a link in the description to an Amazon. There's an Amazon link in the description that will allow you to get the book if you would like to go follow along with us. And if you follow that link, we actually get a little bit of a kickback. So it's kind of self-serving, but it's also helpful for you.
It's mutually beneficial.
Right, yeah. Anyway, so chapters 5 and 6, we have some brief synopses that Chip is going to read, and then we will just kind of get right into kind of our thoughts.
Okay. So chapter 5, there's some small talk after the meeting. I think are they still at clubs? But it's basically Hammond, Breeze, and Yedin have left. Clubs returns and agrees to be part of the team. Then he leaves again. Kelsier, Doxson, and Vin head to the rooftop, where Kelsier gears up and heads off to keep Venture to steal some Atium, which is one of the rarest metals.
It's the 11th metal.
Is it the 11th metal? That's right. Kelsier breaks in, gets the safe with the Atium, and then has to fight some haze killers, which is kind of a cool name. That Kelsier eventually escapes with the desired Atium. There's kind of some things that happen as part of that.
There's a lot there.
But it's a pretty exciting chapter.
Yeah.
Some notes on that was the first mention of Orisior by name. Mare is mentioned as a Tinai, and Mare was Kelsier's wife, who was killed in the pits of Heston.
Yeah.
First mention of Gemmel, I don't remember that.
I saw a couple references to that, and the name
didn't click yet.
And then first mention of Feru chemists, but anyway. Chapter 6 continues. Vin wakes up in a room in Club Shop the following morning. She kind of starts to notice some differences between her old thieving crews and families and how close-knit they are. Kelsier and the rest of the group kind of plot out this big job that they're planning, the destruction of the Final Empire. Marsh, Kelsier's brother...
I mean just the destruction of the Final Empire. That's it. No big deal.
Right?
But Kelsier's a little crazy, and everybody's like, it's just Kelsier being Kelsier, right? It's, in a way, it was kind of that. But
yeah.
Marsh, who was Kelsier's brother, eventually arrives, and everyone leaves, so Kelsier and him can talk alone. And then Vin kind of eavesdrops outside the door.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a lot that happened in these two chapters. Yeah. I felt like there was a lot that we didn't really fully understand when we read this. We talked about chapter 5 and just the break-in at the keep, at the Lord Venture's house. I mean, it just seemed like all of a sudden we just got thrown right into the mix of, all right, well, he's pushing and pulling and he's doing all these things. We really don't have a good grasp on what that is. I felt a little slow, and I thought maybe I had to reread some stuff, so I went back. But I like the idea that we are more or less thrown into this universe where we are, the main character perspective changes more on that later, but...
But it's not the first time that we've kind of had that experience, because in that first episode that we talked about, it's like Kelsier burns tin, and you're like, what does that mean? I'm going back and I'm trying to read it to see if I missed something.
Yeah.
But he throws you into these things. Sanderson does, and not with the intent that you should understand what's happening, but it's like, hey, I'm going to give you some tidbits of information here,
that
and you're going to build
for
that
everything
foundation.
else.
Right.
Which really, the thing I like about that is it's actually going to really enhance the second read-through. So it really plays well into rereadability already. The fact that he's kind of building this story at multiple levels, he throws you in, he expects you to reread this book again.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit further ahead than you guys, so it's interesting too to see where he's laying the groundwork for other things to come. Sure. And it's, it feels a little bit random that Kelsier picks his House Venture to go and rob, but there's more with House Venture later on, and it's a very prominent house we don't necessarily know that when he breaks in. I don't think I'm spoiling anything saying that.
Sure.
It's a very prominent house within the great houses, and it starts to play a role, especially with members of that house later on.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't he pick them because they're a big house?
I can't remember,
He made the comment that like there were one that hadn't been broken into lately and seemed to be doing quite well.
Yeah.
So that was almost more of a statement.
So there seems to be like some intentionality there.
And there might be,
sounds like maybe
but it's a very major. Yeah. They're a major player in Luthadel.
High nobility,
very much so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is totally not even. Hold on.
Ah, there it goes.
All right.
No, much better.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Sure.
That. Yeah.
But I like the idea that we are thrown kind of right into the action. It's quick writing. Like one thing that I noticed with this is that the writing pace is rather quick.
Yeah.
We just came off of Name of the Wind, where things were very methodical, and it really built itself up well. I feel like we're building up well, but I feel like the pacing is a little bit faster.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's something I know we kind of throw a lot of praise at Sanderson, and I really like the book so far, but the writing style is very direct, and I don't want to say it's simple, but it's minimal in a way. Where
It is.
There's not a lot of, it's not heavy on description. There's not pages and pages talking about whatever food Tyrion's eating, or if you go back to Game of Thrones, or all these different.
Is this the same universe of Game of Thrones?
I don't think so.
No,
but
I hope not.
But I kind of went down some rabbit holes just reading about Sanderson and the style, and so what people think, and there's a lot of talk about he's Mormon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really read anything into the writing.
No.
It's very PG. It's got violence and action, but there's no strong language. There's no sex. But the writing is very accessible, and some people compared it to it's really a young adult novel kind of disguised as an adult fantasy book.
Sure.
Let's be honest though, I'm fine with there not being like romance and sex and things like that. Because 9 times out of 10 in fantasy novels it's awkward as hell.
Yeah. And actually there's a little bit that comes into play later, and it's not overt, it's very much just kind of a subdued thing, but there's a little bit of sexual tension between a couple of characters, but it's not explicit, it's not overblown, it's just kind of there, and it's almost more of an infatuation than anything. But
is it the Lord Ruler and the Inquisitor?
Yeah. It's the spikes through the eyes.
Yeah.
But
no need to blindfold.
No, but I was just saying that some of the criticism I read is that that the writing style is too simplistic, and he focuses more on world building than characters. But I don't know. I mean, he's heavily focused on world building, but his characters, even though there's some tropishness to it, even though there's some tropes, he's kind of twisting those a little bit and making them his own, so it's not so predictable. And
one way he's doing that, I think, really well is the split between, like, there are 2 narrators, and it took me a while to figure this out, but at every break he would actually switch the narration from Kelsier to Vin, back to Kelsier to Vin, and he was able to go back and forth, and I think the fact that he's able to really develop a male character and a female character, I think he actually plays that off really well. But it also plays well in the sense that, Kelsier is this older, sort of well-seasoned, traveled.
Now, hold on. When you say older...
Like, I say that in the sense because he has so many more life experiences. Okay. He seems like he has a lot...
So I'm guessing he's younger
old
than...
like Chip or old like me?
I think old like Brian. I think he's about 35.
Yeah.
It'd be my guess.
I'll be 35 in a couple of years.
Okay, so, but old to Brian.
Yes.
Go watch Dirty Dancing.
Oh man,
Dirty Dancing's older than Brian. No,
it is older than me.
It is. Yes, it's a classic in Brian's book.
So is Ghostbusters, if we're going to be honest. But
so what year?
86.
And Ghostbusters 85.
84.
Yeah, 84. Okay. Wow.
Because Ghostbusters and Gremlins were 2 of the top grossing movies.
Gremlins is a good Christmas movie.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Along with Die Hard. That was a conversation from another.
Yes.
From the beer podcast. So go watch that.
If it's out yet.
Well, yeah.
But
it will be.
If it's not, it will be. Yeah.
So I thought it was really interesting when he went and he used his Mistborn powers to, like, his allomancy to fly through the city to push his way into the castle just for this Atium, because at this point he still doesn't know what it is, and I don't know what it is either, but he made the point, like, it's the 11th metal and it's possibly the one that will kill the Lord Ruler. We need to get as much of this as we can because it's worth a lot.
And did he talk about, again, I'm a little bit further ahead, so in these chapters, did he talk about the Pits of Hathsin and what they actually do there?
I think we discovered that in maybe 6.
Is it
chapter 6?
So it's a little bit later.
It's, really,
it's not here necessarily, but
it's close. But
it's
really, that's where it's one of the only Atium mining operations that's around. So.
Right.
And that's why no one is allowed to escape the pits alive.
Right.
Yeah.
It was
I was just gonna say that. Holy crap! What was I gonna say?
Well, for one thing, I thought the fight scene was awesome.
No, oh yeah. I love how he kind of illustrates how some of these mechanics work. It's like, you know, you put the ingot or the coin or whatever on the ground and you push against it and it propels you. Well, I mean, just like the imagery, right? I mean, it's...
Well, and then the whole image of the mist cloak and the whole, you know...
Right. And we talked last time about how well thought out and how structured and how logical the rules of the magic system were. And we're just seeing more layers of that, and it's impressive.
And he keeps building on that as he keeps going.
Yeah.
So there's certain...
Yeah.
I think Vin begins to train with different kind of, you know, the mistings that have, you know, the ability to use only 2 metals, but they're very well versed in those 2. And, you know, she starts to learn the nuances of what you can actually do with some of these things. It's so well thought out in that respect. Yeah.
But it's just so dramatic. Like, these 2 chapters, I felt like the first couple chapters, the prologue and the 4, it gave you a good, like, sense of foreshadowing, even maybe a good sense of, like, building. But this is the first time where we actually are seeing a lot of action.
Yeah, it really kind of just... I mean, let's go back to, like, the Fellowship of the Ring, like the movie. For people who have seen that as opposed to maybe read it. A lot of that movie is world building.
It is.
Like, you spend a lot of time in the Shire and establish that, and you know, as the movie progresses, more happens. But the beginning is really just like setting up this foundation for the things that are going to happen, and I think that's what's happening here.
Right. So. Yeah, Tolkien kind of starts with the little sparklers, but ends in the canon. Yeah, and then we'll see kind of where this goes. But I can definitely tell there are a lot of, and we'll get into this next episode, but there are a lot of specifics that I think, oh, he probably overlooked this. No, he covered those. Yeah, he did a really good job with it. But, I thought these were 2 really solid chapters. What you said, chapter 6 was all about.
That's where they're basically going through the plan. He's meeting with the crew, and his brother shows up.
That's right.
And then Vin's kind of eavesdropping on.
There are a lot of cool things that kind of happen in chapter 6. A
lot of, like, character building stuff. I really like that chapter too.
And it's like world building baked into the character building, because you've got Vin's perspective where they're talking about the Lord Ruler and from everything she's heard in her life, the Lord Ruler is the creator, protector, and punisher of mankind. He saved them from the deepness. He brought the ash and the mists as punishment for people's lack of faith and things like that. So you start to get an idea of the world through these characters' eyes.
Oh, yeah.
And then later on in the chapter, you find out that not everybody sees through the same lens. Because I think I don't remember if it's Doxon or somebody else, but they're talking about, like, the Mistborns and how the, like, legends claim that there's something beyond even the Lord Ruler's power, and that there was something born on the day when the mists first came upon the land, implying that if they are beyond the Lord Ruler's power and they came to be when the mist came upon the land, that the Lord Ruler had nothing to do with the mist, which then counteracts Vin's interpretation of how things went down.
Yeah.
So there are some contradictions there, but I think it's all part of that greater world building because
absolutely.
It's, I mean, look at the United States. You have differing opinions on like political happenings and things like that, or even like let's talk about like creationists versus people who
evolutionary,
believe in evolution and things like that, right? So one thing definitely happened, but your interpretation of it varies between person to person, and I think it's cool from a world building and a secondary creation perspective that he's implemented kind of those types of viewpoints.
And I think that goes to when Vin's talking about the structure of the thieving crew, and her experience prior to that was with Cayman's crew, and it was very much a dictatorship, and he controlled it. But this one, everybody's kind of throwing out ideas and pushing back and forth on each other, and it's much more of a family type dynamic from what I recall in the book. It was, everybody, gets along, but they all are able to voice their opinions without being beaten or ridiculed, or it's...
Well, one thing I like about this too is the fact that the main character, Kelsier, one of the main characters, is not... he's very trusting, and I'm almost wondering if that's going to be a character flaw at some point, because you remember when Clubs walked away? I suppose that was chapter 4, but...
Yeah.
The fact that he was able to trust him to come back without going...
Right. Because I think Vin even commented or had an internal dialogue on he's just letting him leave.
Right.
And he's told him all this stuff.
And he knows the plan, and he's just walking... And then Clubs come back. He's like, I needed to make sure I wasn't under the influence of...
You weren't soothing me
Allomancy or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, one of the cool things that I really enjoyed was they talked about this nobleman that was on their side that was going to
Renault.
help
play the part of Lord Renault.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, you subverted a note. What?
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody came to the conclusion, it might have been Dachshund, it might have been Breeze, I don't remember, but it's like, oh no, you killed him and replaced him.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But they said some things. It's like, they made the comment, it looks like him, but he can't get near an Inquisitor. And Breeze answers, aha, one of those, indicating that there's that there's some sort of like, I don't know, I'm gonna butcher this, but like almost like a shapeshifter or something that like
And you will meet Lord Renault down
later
the road
on.
here,
Oh, nice.
and Vin has some definite thoughts about this person because she totally believes that he's a nobleman, but she knows he's not. So it'll be interesting when we get to that discussion. Spoilers.
But I like that because it alludes to like, oh, what is this this guy or this thing, or we don't even know, but it's just part of like what he does is he just like dangles these little bits in front of you, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna consume that and keep going because I want to know.
My first thought is, how far do the tentacles of Kelsier reach? Because he seems like he is a mover and he's been setting this up. He hasn't been hired by Yedin for very long, but it sounds like he's been preparing for this himself for a very, very long time.
Yeah, and you get elements of that as you go on to where Kelsier's reputation almost precedes him where he's going. That he's got this, I don't even know what the right term is, but he's got this heroic image that the Ska see him as this hero, and and he's not, but the Kelsier we see isn't necessarily a hero, but he's definitely playing that part to the people that really don't know him, that he's creating this icon that people can rally behind and follow so they can start this rebellion and build this army. And
I really like where this is going.
I do too.
As someone who hasn't really read ahead much, this really feels like it draws you in. It seems like the writing style is varied well between, foreshadowing and action and character building and world building.
Right.
He's done a very good job so far of keeping me interested and keeping me kind of ahead.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I think the chapter ends with, like, Kelsier's brother coming
Marsh,
in.
yeah.
And they have a private conversation, but Kelsier must be, like, burning. Hold on.
But I can't remember, because doesn't Marsh leave?
Is it iron?
I don't think it's iron. So iron was one of the ones that they can use to push and pull. I don't remember.
Bronze. It's bronze.
Bronze,
Makes sense
okay.
when somebody's using... Or no, because it would be whatever
Copper diffuses.
Yeah.
Copper's the smoke.
Mm-hmm.
It's the one where
Is
she
it
sees
tin?
the blue lines, so it's iron.
Oh, it's
Because
iron? Okay.
That's what he's burning because he sees the blue lines through the door.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
But, yeah, it's an interesting place to stop.
Yeah, but doesn't Marsh leave? But he hasn't necessarily joined the cause. And,
Exactly.
But Kelsier is pretty
Yeah.
confident that he will.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He doesn't say no. He's like, I'm going to think about it and I'll get
Right.
back to you, basically. Right. Yeah. But,
But we kind of end knowing that one thing I do like about this too is that Vin is still her true character. She is still not trusting of anyone.
yes.
And the fact that the characters are acting how I think they normally should. Like, if you're untrusting, then all of a sudden meet someone, you should stay untrusting.
But we start to see some shifts, which
bit.
we'll get into in the next episode,
Yeah.
which I thought was kind of interesting.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
So
And her growth as a character is pretty interesting. Just the evolution from this real skittish, untrusting young girl to she starts to come into her own a little bit more and push back on things that are happening.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
and not allomantically push back.
Right.
But, you know.
Right.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, she does do some of that too.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
right. But you'll have to watch the next episode,
Yep.
which will debut in a week in order for you to see that.
Oh, man.
That's right.
So,
I have to wait a week for that?
with that, why don't we close this out, and then we can give these fine people just a solid 7 days to anticipate what we're going to talk about next.
All
Maybe
right.
the next two chapters, probably.
Probably the next two. Well,
Yeah.
that'll give them time to read it.
You know what?
That's right.
You know
It'll
what?
give you time for you to read it.
For me
too.
to read it. That's a
Logic
good point.
man.
Jeez.
All right. Well, thank you for watching. As always, we invite you to click the subscribe button. Visit us at our website at www.tardiscast.com. Not only do we have links to our videos, we also have a blog that is updated with some degree of regularity. And you can also follow us on social media at TDW Podcast. That's Instagram and Twitter. And then Facebook is facebook.com/TDW Podcast. We will see you next week. We will cover chapters 7 and 8. We look forward to continuing this journey with you. Thank you very much.
Allons-y.